hello, and welcome to the first sort of guide on how to play uh, Blue Steel aggro. We're gonna call it Blue Steel curve, Blue Steel dock. That sounds the best. We're gonna call it Blue Steel dock. Um, yeah, it's the one I've been running recently. It's been performing very well for me. It got me an invite to European Continentals, and it won the store champ. The first store champs of set six, which was the content creator one that they always do in London. So it's really cool, and I'm really hoping the list can translate well into set seven, sorry. So I'm hoping that, yeah, basically we can just carry on from where we've been and just keep growing with it with new cards, new, better one drops. There's lots of improvements that can be made to the deck. So yeah, just hoping this could be a new archetype that we can kind of fit into the meta and we can keep playing it as the sets go on. So the idea of the deck, of course, people call it aggro because it does look fairly aggro. Sort of when you first look at it. We aren't playing any ramp. We aren't playing the traditional Sapphire Steel. We basically just want to get as much lore as we can, as quick as we can, and close the game out as quick as we can. We don't focus on really any board control. We don't set up any dimes. The only thing really set up is Alice to start warding stuff. But yeah, it's a very aggro-based list. We do have some sort of ways to fight back though. Calhoun's there. We have the boom in there because sometimes you just basically do need to um, take out some things like Cinderella and Robin Hood for the shift lines. And Strength of the Raging Fire, if they're winning the law race and you're trying to race them, it doesn't really work. So you can get a point where you can sing Strength of the Raging Fire from any of your three or above cost characters. And because you play a lot to the boards, you play pretty much all. This is 51 characters, I believe. Um, they it's just you get a lot of value out of strength basically. And McDuck Manor in there as well, just for these Ruby and matchups where they're going to be B-prepping and wiping the board completely, and you can take advantage of that by playing McDuck Manor. The same way you see Castle used to in Ruby Amethyst, in the same way they do with the library right now. So going for the list, sort of in the one drops. So we'll go from card to card, and then I'll try to do a Mulligan guide for you as well. So one drops rise, we've got Mickey Mouse. He's just basically the 1/3 of the deck. He's the Olaf or the Minnie Mouse, stylish, classy, stylish, whatever it's called. It's the 1/3 from Ruby. Um, and kind of comes in. He is probably the best steel one drop, just stat wise card. On paper, without having to combine it with a shift line or something like that to get extra value out of it. He checks a Chernobog, he's going to hit a Merfolk. He's not going to be removed from Cinderella, and on average, he'll gain you between 4 and 6 lore before he's dealt with, and even when he's dealt with, it's quite awkward. So he's just a really good thing to get down turn one to start questing. He can also be poke damage. He can do maths up if you need to pop an opponent's Pluto. He can do that. So he's just got a lot of value to him, and we kind of wanting him down one. Of course, if we had things like Chernobyls, Diablos, Magic Brooms, we'll be playing them, but we sadly don't have those cards. So we use Mickey Mouse, and he's not bad. Like I say, he's probably the best stat-wise one drop in the game. And then we go to Robin Hood. We kind of validates the shift line here. And basically at this point we're kind of scraping the barrel to try and get one drops. So we kind of look at playing a 2/2 goon, which again isn't that bad. And once you play it down, you're instantly threatening a shift line, which requires a response from your opponent. Even if you don't have the shift in hand, your opponent's going to be thinking, I need to deal with that shift line. I want something to happen. I don't want that to go off on turn three. So it's not that bad there, and that shift can be very impactful, especially in these low to the ground matchups. Of course, Ruby decks won't struggle with it too much, but against sort of Emerald Amethyst, a lot of the purple steel decks. You can get it against Steel Song as well. 3/6 on board that whenever you banish something you gain 2 lore. It's just a big character to have on board, and he can control the board quite a bit, and if he's not, he's questing, and it's very hard for them to trade into and to remove, and if they do, you get a card draw as well. So we've gone for the Robin Hood, and we've gone with the shift line. If not, the shift is always a good safe ink, and just having a one drop 2/2 goon on the board is not bad either. And Calhoun, I think just amazing card. On the play, she doesn't shine as much because she's just going to be a one quester and probably get traded with. But on the draw, if they were to play a one drop and you play Calhoun, or even on the play actually, sorry, if they were to play a one drop and you play a Calhoun, you can now remove their things and gain the lore for it. So you can stabilize the board and gain lore. So actually not that bad on the play either. She's really fundamental, I think, in these low to the ground matchups. We did run 3 for a while, but I think 4 is fine. No, 4 is probably optimal because she's just so impactful. And if not, she's going to be questing, turning sideways. She's not going to be taking that damage. Just use a fire the cannons or let the storm rage on target. So she's just really good to be getting down on 2. And yeah, I can't say how much better she is. If you're on the draw and you know the matchup's quite low to the ground and you know you're going to have targets for her to remove, she's really good to get down. And even on the play, if you know that they're going to have characters that one drops that you can take out, she's just really good to get down. So yeah, great card. Doc is our draw engine. I know we're only running three. It's because I kind of explained this a little bit better. Um, so with Steel Song that runs the Doc build, their deck is mainly cheap one cost characters and stuff like that. They can do double Daisy Doc, Cinderella Doc, Cinderella Daisy Doc. They can do these crazy plays where they just spam a bunch of characters on the board. But if you look at our deck, it's more dense in the five drops, and that's where we get our lore. So we aren't flooding hand dropping Doc. Dock is just sort of a way to keep the deck going. It's just sort of it is the draw mechanic. It is the sort of lubricant of the deck, and keeps it running. Of course, you do have other ways to draw cards with Beast, and Robin Hood can technically draw a card. He's more of a cycle, but he does do that. But Dock is just kind of how you want to keep the deck going in those matchups where you just need a little bit more, and you just need to go a little bit wider. But yeah, he's just there basically to keep the deck going. I think you could really, I mean, I wouldn't suggest it, but there is a way you could run the deck without Doc. As the deck kind of lives and dies by the Mulligan, you sort of know if you're going to win or not by the cards you have in your hand. If you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and play 5 cards that are quite impactful, you're going to win. But sometimes you might be like, all right, I didn't get a good enough hand. I need to play a Doc down, and then I need to start playing more cards. So he can just provide you with that little bit more card draw. Of course, you can go to four. There's no reason why you shouldn't be going to four. If you can find the room, there's just we run a lot of uninkables that I also think are very valuable, like Alice and of course the aforementioned Calhoun. So Doc's just really good for that. So yeah, he's just the draw mechanic in the deck. You don't need to hunt for him in a mulligan, never really. Nothing like that. Just if you draw him, when you go into top deck mode or whatever, you play him out and you get two fresh cards. So just really strong there. Smee, best two drop in the game. I feel like I don't have to say how good he is. He's Mr. Smee, or he's going to quest for two, he's going to trade, he's going to do so much for you. He's just always really good, especially into Ruby matchups, two Lord and a trade, because they're going to have to run something in. They won't have a fire the cannons or any steel removal. Just a really strong card. So I can't say why you wouldn't play 4x Smee in the deck. Probably, I don't know if my favorite card in the game, but just probably, I think, opinion wise, the best card in the game. Stats wise, just a really amazing card. And the one damage condition isn't too hard to negate with the fact that we do have 7 captains in the deck. If that is something that worries you, but again, into non-steel matchups, that won't matter at all, really. And then, yeah, he's just really good on on two. You always want to basically be getting a curve every game of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So him or Calhoun is just very impactful to get down on two. On the play or sometimes on the draw, you are able to miss the one drop, but missing the two drop always feels like it's almost a loss for you, sadly. So yeah, if we could find more optimal two drops, we would include more in the deck. We have tried cards like Anna and stuff like that, but there isn't really any other 3/3 type cards that are that good. Razul, I think, is the next best one, who's a 3/3 until he takes damage, and then he's a 1/3, or 1 and 3 with whatever damage he has on him. So yeah, these are the best cards we can fit for the slot. So that's why I'm saying with set 7 coming out, I hope we just get more cards so we can buff up these stats a bit more. And yeah, just really worth it. Got to play him on too. Alice on the play, you'll find is just an insanely powerful card. As you're getting to progress your board first, you can play Alice down and you can ward up the Pluto. And that just makes a spot where whatever deck they're playing, they have to run everything into the Pluto. Of course, there are challenge-based decks with Vox, but Fox is also still a 4 attacker, so they're going to need the 4 damage. They're going to need to find 1 extra damage as well to deal with the Pluto. And all the decks like Steel Song that require singing songs to remove things, they sort of struggle with because now they're going to have to run their cheap characters into it. And the same with Green Steel, they play a lot of low attack characters and rely on the steel removal and the bouncing and stuff like that. So if your board is warded up, it doesn't really, they're going to struggle with it. So Alice down on 3 on the play is very, very good. And then we want to combo that into Pluto on the 4, and I'll get to that in a second when I cover Pluto. On the draw, it can be kind of hard because being like, I'm going to ward and bodyguard up my board, but I'm also behind because I'm going second, can be kind of rough, but still, she's always going to stick. She can sing Strength for the Raging Fire. She can ward it pretty much as well. She is her own version of bodyguard because once exerted, they kind of have to remove her. Otherwise, she's just going to be gaining you that massive amounts of lore and warding something every turn. So, in a sense, she is her own version of Bodyguard in a roundabout way. So, just an amazing card. And to be honest with you, she's the card that brings the entire deck together. The reason why we're playing Sapphire instead of Amber, I think mainly is Alice, and then you've got some other positives like Cogsworth, Baymax, Scrooge, and McDuck Manor. But the main positive is Alice giving something. Ward is really good because Ward is just a really powerful effect in the game. So yeah, on the play, she's a powerhouse. You pretty much win every game as long as you go 1, 2, Alice, Pluto, and then just play other stuff and dock for card draw and whatever. You pretty much just lock the board out, ward it up, force them to do awkward trades, and you just kind of win from that point. But on the draw, it can be kind of hard. So she's a very impactful card in the play, and I'll admit this deck um, shines a lot better in best of three because we basically get one game out of the as long as we win the die roll, we're pretty much going to win that round because we always pretty much win on the play. But on the draw, we have to fight a little bit more because our deck's so proactive and being one turn behind can be hard. This does not make it bad for best of two, of course, because that means you're going into an event with like 50% of your wins already locked in. Like, you're pretty much going to win every game on the play. And then you've got to find the games on the draw. And sort of to combat that on the draw, the ways we sort of do it is John Silver is pretty good, I think, on the draw because you can go 1, 2, John Silver, and then as long as he sticks, you can play a Strength for the Raging Fire. You can also use that with Pete as well because you're now saying that they can't use actions to remove him, and unless they have an Elsa to turn it sideways or something like that, they can't remove the Pete either. So he's going to be able to sing Strength for that next turn. So these cards are very much impactful on the draw. On the play, I'd like to be a bit more proactive and use Alice, but on the draw, I can set these up to sing Strength and protect the board and go a little bit wider as well. Of course, John Silver and Pete can be used in other scenarios besides being on the draw and your turn 3. They're pretty good because if they play a Maui Shark or something like that, and you just need another turn of questing, you can play John Silver down and stop it and go a little bit wider, and to the point where the board might be in a state where they'd have to be prepared it, so that now you're going to be removing their Maui Shark because they're having to be prepared a board that they've just invested a Maui Shark into. And also, if they've just got anything with Challenger and you just wanted another turn of questing. So you could have a turn where it's 1, 2, Smee quests, and then you John Silver something, and then Smee quests again. So Smee's getting another 2 lore for you before he's dealt with, because let's be honest, in aggro decks or these, like the ground decks, everything will be dealt with. Once you play Smee on 2, he's not going to survive until the end of the game. But an extra turn of him questing is pretty nice, and then they've got to deal with another 3/3 on board, which is really good. So John Silver has just been quite a powerhouse. And same can be said for Pete. More into the steel matchups like Steel Song or Green Steel because you can play the Pete on 3 and stop an Ursula or an Aerial, or the Cinderella and the 2-drop Ursula from Amber as well, and just get another turn of questing, advance your board a little bit more. The most optimal lines against Green Steel and Amber Steel with this deck is to go, 1-drop, 2-drop, play a Pete, play another Pete, play Cogsworth, and your board is very wide. They haven't removed anything, and now everything has resist 1. Of course, saying keep 2 Petes in your hand every game is the most optimal play isn't always something you could always do because, it's you need 2 of the same cards and you get 4 in the deck, so that can't always be done, but that's the line you're sort of aiming for. If you do it, you pretty much lock out those games, but sometimes you can achieve the same thing with just 1 Pete. So these cards are very good on the draw, and they're also very impactful later on. Of course, be prepared. If a Steel Song's wheeled you or something like that, and they've got a bunch of songs in hand to remove, you can use the Pete to give you another turn of questing. Maybe that will give you a turn to set up the Alice and let it dry, so you can start warding things up. So yeah, just Pete is very good in all those scenarios where you'd think Pete would be good, as he has been for the past sets he's been in. John Silver as well is just, alright, I just need this to not die for 1 turn, so it can quest for another 2 more lore. If you can get a Smee getting you 6 lore and then they run something in to trade it, that's just a really good turn for you. And the John Silver means he doesn't take damage, so sometimes even to Ruby Sapphire, I will play the John Silver down just to deny the damage on the Smee so he can keep questing for more and force him to find just a better answer than Smee will die after 3 turns. So yeah, John Silver's been very versatile, very good. And there's just lots of tools in this deck, as well as just playing the strong curve. I'm going to play a strong character on these turns, and I'm going to ward and quest. You've also got some like good tools and good usability in the deck. But yeah, these are, like I say, on the play, on the draw, but also these are utility cards as well. And Alice, in a sense, is a utility card. And I can talk. The more you play the deck, it will make more sense to you that if you watch my games against Alphos, the winning game, it was I needed a 4-cost quester to stay on the board, so I'd play Alice, she'd use her use, and then I'd ward up Gantu, and it was against a steel deck, so they had no answer for that, and he's going to lock in that 4 lore before I turn him, before they can trade him with something on their board. Going to the 4 drops, we've tried a few ones out, but Pluto, of course, has to stick because these Alice warding Pluto, forcing them to trade everything in is such an impactful play. And then we thought, well, we kind of want more 5 drops then. We want more 5/5, sorry, for 4 cost. So Scrooge is pretty good for that. And he doesn't lose the damage, he doesn't lose the attack once hit. So once you quest of him, a bounce fox isn't going to remove him. They're going to need to crab buff. They're going to have to do some awkward things. The only thing that's really going to get rid of it is a Zeus. That's quite awkward. But again, you've got Alice to ward it up. And, a Zeus for a Scrooge isn't the worst in the world. They will probably sing it, but that is 4 ink for 4 ink, so that's not the worst. He trades up. If they Maui rush him, he's going to 1 for 1 the Maui. So just being able to play a 5/5 on turn 4 with either of these cards, we have 6 of these cards. So the odds of us doing that on turn 4 is pretty high. And it's just a good tempo swing because in these loads of the ground decks, Lawrence is pretty big. There's a few other cards as well that are pretty big. Smee's pretty big. Just playing a big body on that turn is pretty impactful, I think. I don't know why I went straight to Lawrence. That was the only one I could think of. But being able to play a big statted character early on, and I'd say anything turn 5 is still fairly early on in the game. It's just going to tempo swing you more. If you're going card for card and they play, Daisy Calhoun or Daisy Smee, you go 1 drop Calhoun, that can take up the Daisy, and then turn 3 you can play any of these depending which turn you're on, either on the play or on the draw. If you're on the play, you get your Alice set up. They'll probably go Lawrence, but then once you start warding up one of these two, that means that Lawrence has to either trade it in, and it doesn't even 1 for 1 it. So there's just loads of cool things there, and I don't know why I keep using Lawrence as an example. But I'm going to keep using Lawrence as an example. You can use Sisu as well. We play with quite a small hand size because we're not harboring a big hand size of cards. It's only really docked to keep the deck going. So something like a red 3-drop Sisu as well won't be strong enough to hit the Pluto at that point. So yeah, just really good combo. Getting a 5/5 down on turn 4 is really impactful. Baymax is good. He's going to be a card where he won't shine and won't be useful for a lot of games, and then you're going to have some games where he's like the reason why you won the game. So Baymax is amazing for that. And we just keep it at 2. Again, you ink him a lot of the time, but into Purple Steel, into Steel Song. I think he's a card that Steel Song would very much want to have. He's a 2/6. The 2 is a bit annoying because it means Ruby can deal with him very easily, but then he's only a 2 count in the deck, and you just ink him in the matchups. But into all the other Steel matchups, just being able to keep healing your board after a trade is very nice. Keeping the smear alive, and if just hit with a Calhoun, hit with a Robin Hood. The best play I think I've ever had is like shift Robin Hood, take out something with Robin Hood, then play the Baymax on top to start healing it, and that was against an Emerald Amethyst at EU Continentals, and it was just the combination of hit something, heal it. What can they really do at that point? You've got, and also 2 5/5s on the board that need to be dealt with. If it's not a deck that has Brawl, it's going to be quite a struggle for them. So yeah, just he's been really impactful, but like I say, he's also safe ink, and I'm quite a player who likes to have cards in the deck which are really, really good and can win you a game, but also can be safe ink into a lot of matchups because it just makes your inking a lot better. It makes your inking a lot easier to decide because it's, well, this matchup doesn't need this card, so I'll ink it. So he's pretty good for that. Cogstuff, of course, giving everything on the board resist. We're playing low to the ground. Again, another card that Steel Song would really wish they had. And if it weren't for Alice, you could still say Cogsworth is very impactful in this list and a very important card to have. Just giving everything resist. So on top of that, so if you were to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Cogsworth on top, giving everything resist, it just makes trading so much worse. If they're not got Big Sisu can be a problem for the deck, but if they're not a matchup like that, he's just really impactful. And again, I'll go back to the safe inking. If it's a red deck, you can kind of safely ink Cogsworth because he's too much of an investment on the board. If you're expecting a big Sisu, and of course this deck as well only inks to about 5. If you notice, nothing goes above 5, so it's very rare that we have to ink above 5. We don't really need to. So yeah, he's very safe ink into the red matchups, but then into the steel matchups, we can use him quite a lot, and he just locks the board even more. And anything we play from that point onwards gets more value, so just great card. Beast, I think you can cut him if you don't want to buy for some beasts. Don't buy beasts. But I like having more justifiable card draw. Of course, Alice can ward it as well to give it even more reliability that it's going to stick around. When it's damaged as well, the buff isn't the worst thing in the world. Sometimes people will else a hit or fire the cannons it, and now it attacks for 7, so it's going to clear a lot more things. And then you can Baymax heal it if you want, or start Cogsworthing it so it can do nice trades. So it just felt like having a 2 count is fine of that, and yeah, just having it around the deck hasn't been the worst. But easily probably the most card that you could slot out and put something else in if you wanted to. But I just like saying more that my list has more justifiable card draw on the deck. So these two in it, I'm like, oh, I do have a main card draw and an alternative card draw if required. So it's just nice to have those two things. But required, not really. You could change it for Chi and Po. To you could change it for any 5 drop that quests for 2 or above and has a decent body because, yeah, it's not really that required. But I just like having the idea that I can justify there being two versions of card draw on the deck. Gantu, and this is cool because you can now say this Gantu is very much a safe ink into a steel matchup because it's unlikely it's going to stick in a steel matchup. They should have a steel answer like Strength, Zeus, even fire the cannons twice or whatever. But everything into Reeve matchups, he's very, very big. The only thing they can really answer with is Elsa. So but if you've got a bodyguard up, or and even with the Elsa, they need to hit it with something else, so he's going to require some damage to take out. But Medusa's not going to hit him. Tremaine's going to hit him, but you can always play around Tremaine. So into Ruby, he's a very strong card. Into Steel, he's not. So into Steel matchups, he's very much a safe ink. But sometimes, like I say, you just need to Alice ward a Gantu, and in that scenario as well, you quest with Alice to get 2 lore. Give this ward, and that means it's going to quest, so you get 6 lore in that entire interaction, which is just a really powerful move. So he's just been really strong. And of course, as well, going down to I'm 4 lore off, or even getting yourself to a close point when you're at 20, he's just a threatening thing. And just to be, and that's the point of I'm trying to make from, I'm rambling so much here, I'm excited to talk about the deck. Going from the Steel Song variant where it's like play a bunch of Daisies, Rapunzels, and Lawrences, we can't really do that as much because we don't have those cheap big questers. But what we can do is be like, and here's a Gantu, it's going to quest for 4, we paid 5 ink for it, what are you going to do about it? And slap big characters like that down and just make instant problems for them in quest for 4 every turn until it's dealt with. So yeah, this is how the deck works. It's sort of Steel Song, Amber Steel Song docked, but the lore threat is more at the top end with these bigger characters. So Gantu is a very good card. I think he pretty much is a staple in the deck as well. Won't be going anywhere from a 4x for now. And the Robin to shift line, yeah, sometimes on the play, I think it's never really good to shift. Sometimes I will ink him and play an Alice or play something else over him. But on the draw, sometimes you need to sort of equal out the board a bit. So if you do have it and you're able to get the shift off, which is always harder on the draw, of course, because they'll be one step closer to brawl or let the storm rage on. But if you do get it, you've now got a 3/6 on board. You can start trading and equaling the board out. And if you have a Calhoun and a Robin Hood trading and stuff like that, it just means you're always chasing lore. You're in a really good spot. So yeah, he's a pretty good shift on the draw, because on the draw as well, we don't have the impact of playing Alice and warding off a Pluto first, setting up that lock. So what we need to do is tempo swing and be like, and we're going to get a 5 cost down on turn 3, or we're going to, start stalling you and then sing Strength for the Raging Fire. And even we could start spamming like on 3 if you can do a 2-drop and a 1-drop, I think that's really great. On turn 4 if you can do 2/2 drops, that's really great as well. So yeah, he's a pretty good card in the draw to sort of tempo swing and shift it back in your favor. But otherwise, he's just another 5-drop in the deck, and he just justifies the 1-drop. Baboom, don't go into the hall of I need to use Baboom all the time. You don't. If there's a Cinderella or there's a Robin Hood, they've got a Robin Hood shift line, or any shift line that you find quite threatening, even the Queen is still lingering around, you can just Baboom it and take it out. It's just good to have that in the deck. Of course, Diablo is still pretty popular, and I think after NA Continentals, I still have the prediction that what's it called? Green Steel is going to be popular again. So Baboom is just a good card to have around. It's just good to have that 2 damage. I don't like that. Ping it and take it off the board, because there are some cards, if you were to play the game and be like, my deck can never answer Diablo except for maybe Strength for the Raging Fire. That's just never bad to go into a room with. So just having that 2 damage is pretty good. And we have tried it with Twin Fire. I like all of my removal to be inkable, so I've kept with Baboom. But you can use Twin Fire if you wanted to. That was the original card that I used in the EU Continentals as well. But this is the updated list. This is where I think it's sort of at a point where I'm barely even touching the numbers on this deck anymore, because I think it's so locked in, and I'm going to bring it to Store Champs and hopefully win a bunch with them. And then, yeah, go down Strength of Rage and Fire. We've tried Smash, we've tried Zeus. Strength seems the best. You've got some nice 3-cost singers to do it, because if you're getting these 2 to sing it, they only quest for 1, so you don't mind taking that 1 lore off turn to sing Strength and remove something. Alice sometimes even can sing it as well, and she's pretty much, Alice and Pete are always going to be able to sing it, because once you play them, it's very hard for them to remove it. So they're always going to be able to sing it. So it's just a very good way to not lose the tempo of play smash on for 3 ink because that's going to be your entire turn. Instead, it's sing it and then also play something that turn as well. So strength has been like one of the best removals for us. We don't need lots of it. We're a very proactive deck. We rarely want to be choosing to remove things over just playing stuff on the board. But of course, if they're going to play like double Genie or something like that, or double Daisy, you kind of can't be, on the draw or even on the play sometimes. You can't be like, and I'm going to try and still race you, even though you're clearly getting more law than me every turn. So sometimes you need to strength equal out the board, set up the Cogsworth, set up all of your questers, and then start racing them. But sometimes it'd be like, hold on a minute, you're just gaining more law a turn because for some reason every other color combo has better cards than us. So yeah, strength has been quite useful for that. And we've, like I said, we've tried Smash, we've tried Zeus, we've tried all these other cards, but strength has been the one that shines the best. Mukduk Mana, is very good for the Ruby matchups. A lot of them are leaning into Be Prepared, and I think after Ed's list, where he's played 4 Be Prepareds, we're going to be back to that point. So if they're to wipe the entire board, you can just play it down. And sometimes as well, if they haven't got enough pressure on the board, and you get to a point where it's, you've got a bunch of questers on the board, maybe you've got a Calhoun or a Smee and Alice, and maybe something else, you can play a Mukduk Mana and start splitting your threats instantly and say, well, you can play your Maui, but you can take out something on my board, or you can start dealing damage to my Mukduk Mana and sort of start splitting the threats in that sense. And I've had many games where it's ended where there's a Mukduk Mana on board and there's a Gantu on board and a Mukduk Mana on board, and it's like, which one do you want to deal with? Because probably the Gantu if you can. If not, start dealing with the Mukduk Mana, and you can get these really awkward spots. So right now, mana locations are pretty good. I think even when people start adding location answers to the deck, they're never that good, and that comes from a Sapphire Steel player who played Rise of Titans for like 2 sets. So Hideaway and Ruby Sapphire, okay, fair enough, but it's still not the best thing in the world for them to be doing right now on that turn. So you can sometimes as well. I'll have games against Ruby Sapphire where I'm able to keep 2 Mukduk Manas in the Mulligan, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then I'll just play Mukduk, and then it start B prepping, dealing with board, and then it's just the manas will be passively gaining lore over the turns as they can. I think you can go to 4 if your room is very Ruby heavy. You can definitely go up to 4 Mukduk Manas if you want to, and make cuts somewhere where you think necessary, maybe around here or around here. You kind of really can't cut the 1 drops and the 2 drops because you just really have to be hitting 1, 2, 3, 4. But 3 is quite dense here, and 5 is quite dense as well. So maybe you could cut 1 and put 1 in there if you wanted to. But that's sort of a rundown of the deck. I would probably get some gameplay videos out as well. But just before I go, I can probably do a quick Mulligan guide for you, just to show you how the deck usually operates. So this would be on the play, and this would be what I would argue quite a fairly good hand. Um, Once you're removing cards like this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and actually we could keep this one as well because that would be 5. And also, it's unlikely the deck will brick, but we just want to get uninkables out of the hand. We could even keep this for another safe ink. We pretty much just don't want the uninkable on a hand right now. And as I say, you aren't hunting for docks. It's just if you draw a dock, it's very good to play it, and it keeps the deck going. But to be honest with you, maybe I would keep these because actually I wouldn't mind having a Baboom or a Strength of the Raging Fire in hand. So I'd send them back. But that's not bad either. We now can do Ink Smee, play a Mickey, and then whatever we draw, or we can ink the Robin Hood actually. I think probably ink the Robin Hood earlier because I quite prefer when you get to that 5 ink, not always to play a 5 drop, to maybe just play 2 Smees or something like that. So you could ink Robin Hood, play the Mickey, maybe draw another ink, play the Calhoun if they're going aggressive. If it's Emerald Amethyst or Ruby Amethyst where they might be playing 2 1-drops on turn 2. Calhoun's very good for that because that's threatening them. And then maybe you can get to a point where you just spam two Smees on turn 5. You could do it on turn 4, but we have the Pluto, and I'd really want to be playing Alice on 3 and locking up the Pluto. But if you played both of these on turn 5, that's going to be getting you 4 lore rather than 2 lore. So it's just really simple math sometimes. So yeah, you could go 1, 2, or 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you've locked the board into a warded state where they have to run things in, and then on top of that, you're just going to keep applying pressure by playing new cards. So that's a terrible hand. So we're going to start again and do sort of on the draw. What I'd like to do is I like to keep keep the 1-drop, of course, send back the Alice. So this is where it gets a bit more interesting because we're sending back an Alice, a card that I've just said is really impactful and really good. But we'd keep a Robin Hood. Of course, we have 1, 2. I'd probably send back the Baboom unless it's a deck like Green Steel or Amber Steel where Baboom will be quite impactful. But let's be honest, let's send it back for this scenario. And we get this. So what we can do now is we can do Inkagantu, play a Robin Hood, or play the Mickey, actually, probably be a bit better. and then hopefully we draw some more ink, play the Smee down, and then on turn three we could either John Silver something if we looks like we can sort of tempo out the board a little bit more, or what's better I think is you play one of the one drops and another two drop again. So now you're going too wide on that turn. And okay, yeah, a one drop and a two drop isn't that good, but you're just going wider. There's more threats, more things to quest, and we're actually in this instance we do want the dock because if we're double spelling, which is just when you play two cards in one turn, um, you can play the dock to start refilling again. And even you could get to a point actually, sorry, where actually I think you could do an even better line here. Sorry, you would ink the Gantu, play the Mickey. Turn two, you could play one of the two drops, and then when you could John Silver, and then when you get to turn four, you could play a two drop and a two drop. So you go too wide, and you've drawn two cards as well, which just value wise, if you think in your head, two characters and two card draw, that's really good. And that's sort of how you want to play the entire deck. You want to be thinking as much value as you can from the cards that you have in your hand. So yeah, that's just a rundown of the deck. That's sort of a quick walk through it. If there's any comments, like tell me any matchup guides you want. I'm going to try to get some gameplay videos as I do the store champs. But to be honest, if you pick up the deck, it's very intuitive. Hopefully I can get some guides going out, and hopefully we can get some people representing the list out there. I'd love to see people performing this in store champs and see what goes for them, or even just in their local leagues. So yeah, thank you very much.